This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. It is the month of February, officially Black History Month. And as always, for the love of the game, for the love of the culture, it's always humbling to be a part of that premise of what Black History Month means when you got two brothers repping, discussing the game, a game that has been elevated by Black people, you know, even though it was invented by a white person. To see us take it to the levels that it's been taken to, I think is remarkable. But it's not just any one person. It's not just any one community. And if you look at the global brand of the NBA, you can honestly see that it has a global effect, a positive effect. And it comes with a little entertainment as well, too. So without further ado, let me roll out the red carpet to my man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Happy Black History Month, brother. Nice way for us to kick off the Black History Month season, first episode in February.
Absolutely. And happy Black History Month to you and to all our friends and fans and listeners out there as well, too. BHM is an important time of the year, but Black History is all year. It should be year-round celebration, but understanding that the month is when we will pay the most attention to the traditions that the culture has kind of made, if you will. But at the end of the day, you know, we're here to celebrate the sport of basketball. As you alluded to, so many great contributions, you know, from a global impact that the NBA continues to have around the world. So I'm excited as always, man, to continue what we do here on the Baseline, getting in here for BHM and then all months and everything moving forward.
Absolutely. All right. So before we get into our show, I wanted to make sure that we take a quick moment to thank all of our listeners, to thank those who are first time listening in, and to thank the basketball podcast community. Unfortunately, we did not win Best Basketball Podcast through the Sports Podcast Group Awards. That's okay. I think we know that we won, and we know that our listeners have won as well too. To be in the same conversation as some of the most premier basketball podcasts that are out there. Shout outs to the Draymond Green Show. Shout outs to Old Man and the Three. And then who was the show that took first?
Serrano show, not Serrano show. Justin, I can't remember right now, but yeah, they network. I was forgetting his name, but his Twitter name is Network, and he's been around for a very long. Justin Concepcion, Jesus, wow, terrible. So his show did a really great job, and he's done an amazing job, I think, working on ESPN, working at the Ringer, and everything he's doing here now. So his show definitely took home the gold, if you will, and definitely shout outs and congratulations to them for sure.
Absolutely. And, you know, I just wanted to make sure that we highlight and profile the fact that, you know, whenever you're being in consideration for an award, whenever you're being in consideration, you know, by contemporaries as a quality show, we take pride in that. And, you know, no matter what the outcome would have been, you know, we felt like all of the work that we've been doing for as long as we've been doing it's what continues to drive us in doing that work. And so being acknowledged by our contemporaries, our colleagues, being acknowledged by fans and people alike, it's made it worth the grind that we've been putting through, like we've mentioned in our Instagram posts and our social media outlets. And we just want to thank everybody for putting us in that position to even be in the conversation, putting us in that position where there was an opportunity for us to possibly win it. And while we didn't win hoisting a trophy, I think we've won as far as showing people that no matter what you got going on your everyday, if there's something that you do feel passionate about, something that you love, if you have a voice for something and you're dedicated to making sure that that voice is elevated and spoken to the masses, it will be heard. And I'm just grateful that, you know, again, we always give our kudos, but I think this is a great opportunity for us to kind of give those kudos to the people who've taken the time to listen to our show whenever the opportunity presented itself, and to give us that opportunity to be, you know, on that stage to see if we could even, you know, rub shoulders with the big boys.
Yeah, no, for sure. am incredibly humbled, I think, by the experience in that of itself. And, for all our fans and listeners who've been out there, have been rock with us from day one to, year 11, if you will. We are incredibly humbled and grateful to have even been considered, for this distinguished honor. And I think, as you alluded, and so eloquently, winning in terms of the title, if you will, is not necessarily what it was always about. I think it's just even the recognitions to be honored amongst our contemporaries within this space. Some folks who have, and this isn't initiated in any capacity, but just have larger names than we do by virtue of the things that they've been able to accomplish, in their great lives as well too. And I think in essence, just to be in the ethos, if you will, is something that we can always hang our hat on and be proud of, but more so for our fans and listeners, they can be proud of, because it goes to show that, your support has propelled us into a space that we didn't know we would ever be 11 years ago. So thank you to everybody who did vote. And again, congratulations to the winner. And I want to make sure that we get it right. 6 trophies with Jason Concepcion and Shea Serrano. They were the winners of the Best Basketball Podcast. So yeah, I was right in terms of the Concepcion, but I want to make sure to get their podcast name right. 6 trophies.
Absolutely. And listen, man, it's all family. It's we're all part of, a family where we're helping not just, our own brand, but we're also helping the brand of basketball, and we're giving basketball a viable voice where, in mainstream media these days, it sometimes feels few and far between. It only seems to suit it when it's based on ratings and national attention. We're giving it an everyday voice so that it doesn't lose, the importance of the luster for those who may not be interested in all of the other sports that are out there, or only just highlighting, the more attractive and entertaining aspects of the game. These other little nuggets is what continues to keep the game elevated in that conversation space. So shout outs to all, not just, those who won, all of the finalists. And it was a page worth long of considerations, all of them with unique styles and perspectives of how the game is discussed, how the game is covered, how the culture is covered. We just want to say thank you to all of you guys. Push us as hopefully we have been pushing you. And this is why the community has opened up in the way that it has.
Well said, brother. Well said. So, yep. See you next year. We'll see what happens in 2025.
We already grinding. So anyway, so we got a great show up on tap. We got some news and notes happening in an association. We also want to talk a little bit about the NBA All-Star reserves that have been selected, as we're just around the corner for NBA All-Star weekend. And then we got what we call our mid-season focus, man. We're talking a little bit about some mid-season perspective teams that I think people need to be paying attention to. We'll look at who do we think is the most dangerous team that can actually make noise. Should they make the playoffs? If there's a team that's currently, the play-ins played right now, who would be considered the most dangerous team that could probably knock off the Goliaths in the conferences respectively. So mid-season focus, man. That's our topic of conversation as well too. So NBA All-Star reserves and midseason focus is going to be what's on tap. As always, be sure to get at my man Shaw, at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at Game Face Lead. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. Be sure to go to www.thebaselinenba.com to catch this episode and all of our previous episodes. If you're catching us on our YouTube channel, we say hello to all of our viewers. You obviously see the blue and white logo. That means that we are rocking with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group be running these content streets. So if you want to check us out and the family of great content creators like Gimmick Infringement and such, we obviously want you to go to www.19mediagroup.com so you can check out all of the shows available and all of the great creators and the great content that is laid out on a weekly basis. All right, Shaw. So let's get right into some news and notes. I wanted to get your take real quick before we start talking about a couple of key injuries that have impacted the NBA and might also impact the NBA trade deadline in kind. But I wanted to get your thoughts. Over the last week and a half, there's been a lot of conversations about the New York Knicks. A lot of hype being driven about the New York Knicks and the potential of their success. And I know if people hear me talking about this, they think that, all I'm doing is sitting here watching ESPN and watching Stephen A. Smith. Orange and blue skies, baby, orange and blue. But I am someone who is of a realistic mindset, living up here in New Jersey and watching the murmurs and listening to all of the sports radio talk shows and all of them who've now suddenly taken affinity because, you know, football season is basically over, right? No Jets, no Giants, you know what I mean? No Bills, right? Only when it suits New York City fans that the Bills actually are in New York and want to, you know, bring them a part of that football family.
Sure.
I find it interesting that all of a sudden the Knicks have a successful record with a very smart trade in OG Anunoby and have suddenly catapulted themselves from we're going to be a solid team that can make a good run, right? They're good enough that it can make a good run in the playoffs. And, oh, I think we can contend in the East. I think we can even win the Atlantic Division title. Yo, man. And then I'm watching this game against, you know, the Knicks versus the Los Angeles Lakers. And this is exactly the reason why it drives me nuts, the level of fandomness that happens with New York Knicks fans who don't seem to be properly in touch with the reality of what it's going to take for the team to be in a championship mode, to be in championship position. It is not even about the Lakers and primetime TV. It is about the team, the team makeup and everything like that. And I just wanted to get your take, if you had the opportunity to watch the game, and all of the murmurings I'm sure you've been getting, because, you know, how Miami Heat fans would be like, oh, all of a sudden we chop liver. Like we're not considered serious contenders down here just because we've had, you know, a couple of dips in our, you know, losses, some ugly losses, things of that nature. Like, I just don't understand, like, why is it so that Knicks fans tend to just elevate their team because they have a 10-game above 500 record, a 14-game above 500 record, from being a legit team that can make a run, no question, all of a sudden saying that we can start taking things, that they have not shown that they have earned the right to have that conversation just yet.
At the end of the day, we know what it is. I think New York fans are one of the more verbose fan bases out there, not just in the NBA, but I think in sports in general. There's a lot of excitement when the Knicks are good. So their fan base hitches their tail to that wagon, if you will, and they run rampant with it. So I think while we're trying to be based in, well, in some semblance of reality, like, and hey, prove it before you go and make these proclamations. Right. That's what makes sports fun. I think in a lot of ways, it's just hey, they're wild.
I completely get it. I completely get it. But I also have been of the mindset, and you know, and I know this, Shaw, because we've seen this with the Boston Celtics. You're not just playing with the fandomness. You're also playing with history. And history is reflective that the New York Knicks have not won a championship in almost 50-something plus years. Okay? And to get to that point, so to speak, for them to even be in that conversation, when have they even been in the Eastern Conference Finals, right? When have they been in the NBA Finals, right? It's been the turn of the century. It's been that long, right? I'm of the mindset, when I start seeing you checking certain boxes is when I'll start buying into the idea that what you're doing has sustainability and has elevated, realistic accomplishments that can be had. I'm not saying that I'm just skirting the Knicks season aside, but watching that game against the Los Angeles Lakers, to me, was a byproduct, again, of outside noise making it way too more than what it needed to be. Making it way too more than what it needed to be for the players to do what is necessary for their elevated positivity, for their confidence about how good of a team they really can potentially be. Because now you're squeezing everything in. You're confined. And it just sucks sometimes, man, because just as easily as we elevate them, they can very easily crash and crash hard. And then no one is holding accountability when these pundits, these commentators, these analysts, these fans come telling, you know, just airing out their grievances about how disappointing this team was, when they never really saw and paid attention to what was required, what's needed for the team to continually be better, to be good, to be viable in the grand scheme of what the current NBA looks like to be championship worthy.
Well, you know, fun fact for our fans and listeners. So it's interesting we're having this conversation because obviously we're going to talk about, you know, surprise teams, you know, exciting teams, dark horse teams, etc. in the second half of the show. But part of what I considered for the content this week was really talking about the two hottest teams really in basketball right now, and the Cavs and the Knicks. You know, was looking to try to even get some guests on here, you know, covers those teams a little bit more closely to even get this level of insight. But we're here now, right? We're here now, so let's have the conversation. I think in essence for the Knicks and Lakers game, I would caution you to read too much into that. Remember, no Anunoby and obviously no Julius Randle. So the fact that they were able to pull off a couple of wins without both of those guys in their most recent streak is a credit to their, you know, to the testament of the team that they've built. But I think, you know, when they lose, you're going to say it's like, well, they didn't have their full complement of players and two starters and one guy who was actually an all-star this year in Julius Randle. So to me, I'm not going to read too much into that Lakers game, but I think in the overall ethos of where the Knicks are trying to propel themselves in terms of, and I should say their fans are trying to propel themselves, if you will. Yeah, it seems like a little aggressive, but you got to go into the season and prove it and go into the playoffs and prove it. But let's not take anything away from them. I don't care that the Celtics were able to push the Heat to the 7-game series, because to me that series was done, you know, basically after game 3. I was like, well, yeah. And so while Boston forced a game 7, I don't think any team played the Heat better than the Knicks did last year. And I think if you take that into consideration, now with some of the changes that they've made in terms of their overall roster and shakeup, and as the trade deadline looms here in a few days from recording of the show, they could still even get potentially even better in that. I understand why there's this level of optimism here. Right now, Tibbs has a team built within his image, like truly within his image, and reinforcements can potentially be coming back on the way. Mitchell Robinson is apparently not done for the year and could come back at the end of the season, provide some bolstering to what Hartenstein has been able to do. And he's been amazing since starting for them. Right. Not to mention, obviously, the conversations around Jalen Brunson and whether or not he's a 1A guy. I think we're done with that, at least for right now. So once they get Randall back and Anunoby comes back to the full, his injury seems to be short term. I can see why people are excited about this team. DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, they all fit what Tibbs wants to do. And if, hey, they get the right matchup, and we all know it's about that coming into the playoffs, this Knicks team has the potential to make a run. I'm not saying finals, but if they effed around and found themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals, depending on how the matchups went, that wouldn't be that surprising to me, I think, at this stage with how they played. But they got to do it in the playoffs.
And listen, and again, I want to make sure, I'm glad you brought up this point. I just want to make sure that I'm prefacing this by just saying that I'm not talking about the team, because I like the team. Right? I love the team. I love that they're actually making moves where you can realistically see the team's improvement as you go through the season. The fact that you can have guys out there competing when you don't have your full roster tells you more about how dangerous the team can truly be. But that does not mean that they suddenly have been catapulted to this elevated space of, well, they should be among one of the top 3 teams in it. Yeah, by record, but not by definition of saying that they know how to beat the Celtics in a 7-game series. They know how to beat the Sixers in a 7-game series. They know how to beat the Heat in a 7-game series. They don't. And those are the teams who have constantly been in the conversation of the Eastern Conference semifinals and the Eastern Conference finals. So until I see sustained success, whether you want to use the regular season or you want to actually use their playoff records as a depiction of what the team needs to look like to beat those teams, I'm going to err on the side of they're good to be among one of the teams to put themselves in the best advantage possible so that they can give themselves the best chance to win those series. But under no circumstances should we be elevating them in such a space. Like, you're hearing these conversations saying, oh, well, what if LeBron James is available? Why do you need LeBron James? You know what I'm saying? If you believe in the guys that you have, then make sure that those guys are good, right? And get more guys that can come in and be good with those are your guys, right? When we're talking about Randall, Brunson, and Anunoby, right? And then you've got Hart and DiVincenzo. I'm not saying that if a guy isn't really good and he's available and you don't have to give up a ton of capital to do it. What I'm saying is don't get caught in the glamour and the glitz of what the trade deadline can offer and throw pieces in there that's throwing off what is supposed to be being built up as your core team. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you, at this point, if you're not sold on Julius Randle being a part of this, then fine. Any packages you have, you're saying you are getting you a Kevin Durant type person to replace what Julius Randle has given you, which you better make sure it works. You better make sure that Tibbs makes it work, because then what are we talking about now? And I think that to me is the part that irritates me more than anything is the unrealistic thought process that fans put the whole idea that the Knicks have to go through when you're watching it being exactly the way that they did in the 90s, right? And it's agrees. You can see the desperation, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's befuddling to me that even sports media here in New York are just so egregiously unrealistic about what they're trying to make the Knicks do that they don't have to be doing right now.
Well, I've heard it from all sides, I think, over this last week with the Knicks, as you alluded to, the over exuberance to even some of the casting of doubt of saying, listen, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit too, as you like to say, you know, getting ahead of our skis, right? At the end of the day, let the season play out. I don't know that they're going to do anything drastic at the trade deadline. I think there was one or two names out there that could have been potentially available in terms of big name pieces that they could have looked to acquire. And I don't think anything is going to happen in that space, right? Well, one guy is injured, and then one guy is on another team that's doing just as well in them in Cleveland. So, you know, I think the Knicks are going to more or less stand pat with in terms of star making moves. And maybe they make some things on the edges, maybe a Malcolm Brogdon to back up Jalen Brunson, you know, and spell him since they no longer have Quickly, you know, coming off the bench, something along those lines, something that could be a really, you know, Tiger Woods fist pump solid move, but nothing that's going to be like, oh my God, you know, they've changed the entire course of the Eastern Conference and the NBA by this star coming in. And I think that's the path for them. They want to give this group a chance to really kind of prove it to themselves. And I think Tibbs and company will allow that to happen, especially once they get everybody back healthy.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And our topic, mid-focus, man, right? Like, all right, so you mentioned that the other team that I think people need to pay attention to and look out for are the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I'm glad you brought that team up, Shaw, because ironically enough, this is a team like 13 games, 14 games, like I think like 13 games above 500 right now. And 15. They are quietly, you know, putting teams on notice that if they are a team that's among top 5, right, in the playoff running, they are a team that you don't want to deal with for home field advantage, and they're probably not the same type of team that the Knicks handled easily last year, just simply because I think there is a growing sense of confidence that this team knows how to play together, knows how to compete together, and you're seeing it by these wins that they're putting up. Now, maybe the schedule has been a little bit favorable for them to put that in its position. And I think when we see on the back end of their, of after All-Star weekend, where their schedule, I think, is going to get a little bit more difficult, and they're going to run into a string of really competitive matchups that are taking place. I think we'll really see whether or not this team has grown leaps and bounds. But again, when you talk about matchups and how that plays such a critical part when it comes to the playoffs, this is a team that checks all the boxes where they can be a matchup nightmare against any of the top teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Cleveland has found a way to survive. When they lost Evan Mobley and Darius Garland basically within a day of each other, or I think it might have even been the same day, might have been hours later, for the weeks that they both were out, you thought their season could essentially be lost. Maybe Donovan Mitchell would be on the trade block. And it took them a little while to kind of get their bearings, but you know, they got a couple of G League and two-way guys to come in here and contribute. Karis LeVert had some hot moments here too, but there's been nobody more consistent than Donovan Mitchell, you know, I think in this run. Basically playing point guard, being the playmaker and the lead scorer and everything that they needed to do. And then Jared Allen has really picked things up here over the last month. A lot of the conversation, can he and Mobley play together? Do they get in the way? Kind of like in the Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis conversations, you know, some years ago, different skill sets for both. But again, and just in terms of like, hey, do they just not complement each other? Allen took off while Mobley was out. And I think it's now Mobley is the guy who wants to figure out, hey, can I play alongside, you know, Jared Allen? Because he's really hooping this season. To me, this Cavs team, and more importantly, what JB Bickerstaff has been able to do on the sidelines, there's no, I wouldn't say there's not a better story, but I'd be hard pressed to find a better story than theirs, given what they've come up against. Two all-star type caliber players in this front line. It's one thing to have two starters gone from a lineup, but you're talking about two, at least in theory, all-star caliber players. Mobley's somebody who people were thinking about defensive player of the year coming into the season, and they've just found a way to get it done thanks to Donovan Mitchell, Sam Merrill, and guys like that. Even Max Strus, that signing has turned out to be immense for them this season. I really love what the Cavs have been able to do in the position that they put themselves into, but they are another situation because they had a really great run last year, and then they got bounced unceremoniously by the aforementioned New York Knicks. It was just a terrible matchup for them. So right now the Cavs are soaring, and listen, they can get as high as 2, and if the Celtics stumble, you never know. Could they actually end up being the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference? But either way, right now they've ascended to 3 as we're recording here today, and I wouldn't put anything past them because I thought bringing Mobley and Garland back, I was like, all right, well, how is this going to work? Even in the couple games that it's been, they figured it out thus far.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to see. That's the whole point of the season, right? Is being able to see how this team can pivot when adversity afflicts them, and I think we're seeing a little bit more of that. I think that there's no question that this is a team that is playoff worthy, right? They will be successful. I think what it comes down to is, have they grown? And we saw this a little bit when Spider Mitchell was playing with the Utah Jazz. You looked at the roster that he was surrounded by, and with Quinn Snyder, I mean, he had those teams overachieving the first 2 years that Spider Mitchell was a part of that roster, right? And then they finally grew into who they were. And the problem is that they just never understood. They never saw it, and it just never stuck. Like they just could not get better then. And the landscape of the NBA completely changed on its head with the acquisition, with James Harden being in Houston, with the Golden State Warriors being who they were. It was just too daunting of a task, and there wasn't enough time given the market and the Utah Jazz. I think it's a different situation with Cleveland. I think people in Cleveland really do appreciate and embrace Spider Mitchell, and I think you're going to see how much of an effect that can be if this team, again, shows incremental success. And I liken it to the same comparison that we're making with the New York Knicks. Everybody wanted to see the Knicks going after, Spider Mitchell over Jalen Brunson, right? And my whole point is Jalen Brunson more the New York Knicks that you need than the Spider Mitchell that you want? That should have been the quote unquote question that you're asking yourself. Oh, now all of a sudden New York Knicks fans love them some Jalen Brunson. They'd have loved him more than they'd have loved Spider Mitchell. Like you freaking knew that, right? No, you didn't, because you weren't paying attention. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. I think Cleveland fans now are seeing exactly what Spider Mitchell brings to the table, and I think they want to embrace that if they see it on the incline. If they start seeing it on the decline, then we'll start questioning again the Altman situation, and we'll start questioning whether or not this was actually a solid move and this, that, and the third. But again, you have to be patient with what you're seeing, because it's not like these guys came in as 30-year-olds going through the gamut. You know what I'm saying? They had to go through their struggles and adversities from their previous teams respectively. Luckily, they were winning in those situations to get you to this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned from before, because Cleveland, as you were discussing it, I said, well, let me take a quick look. They actually have the 20th, so I guess 10th easiest schedule. Sorry, so 20th hardest, so 10th easiest schedule remaining. So they could potentially stack up here, a couple wins. Boston, ironically, ends up having the 2nd easiest schedule remaining. So you would figure if they do what they're supposed to do, they can main top of the course going to Eastern Conference. But everybody above Cleveland, right now, they have harder schedules than they do. So the Cavs are in a perfect position to get into potentially as high as a 2 seed, depending on a lot of things, and anything can go wrong at any given moment. But as we're having the conversation today, and yeah, they set themselves up for what could be a potentially great run. And all the conversation about whether or not Donovan Mitchell wants to be here, I think that will be determined based on how well they finish out this season. And do they try to ultimately move him this offseason? That remains to be seen. But right now, I can't imagine Donovan Mitchell going anywhere with how well the Cavs are playing.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our conversation mid-season focus, man. You know what I'm saying? With Jay-Z and through teams that we think are probably going to be the most dangerous and ones you want to pay attention to. So with that being said, Shaw, let's go to the Western Conference, right? Which teams do we think are going to be the most dangerous and that you need to pay attention to?
Yeah, well, it's the most dangerous team to me is a team that's also the most surprising team right now. And I think it's Oklahoma City Thunder, and not just trying to ride the proverbial wave, right? But the biggest caveat here is youth and the experience and have they been there before. But you have a legitimate MVP candidate. They are basically 8-9 deep throughout. They have the requisite shooting. They play defense. Yes, they can lose a little bit more size and a little bit more girth, I think, in the middle, and maybe that gets addressed at the trade deadline. But to me, OKC is equally the most surprising and easily the most dangerous team, I think, going into this year, the remainder of this year. Again, assuming everything stays healthy. Chet has been phenomenal as a rim protector, skinny as he is. He's been a great deterrent inside there. So if they can get, like I said, a little bit more beef to back him up or to play alongside him, the sky's really the limit for them, man. And as I said going into the season, I'm a big fan of, J-Dub, that Jalen Williams. And you were a little skeptical of my guy, but he is a certified bucket getter. I know he's got a little ankle thing going on right now, but he gives that team another dimension, and Lou Dort just becomes like superfluous. Like they don't even, he's just kind of out there, and he's just kind of playing defense. They don't really need
that's my young son. That's my young son, right?
But I think J-Dub has regulated him to really just a complementary role. Like Dort is not thrust into some role that he'd be miscast for. And I think that has all the makings of a really good basketball team, not to mention Giddey, who's just kind of, hey, I'll score every now and then, but I'm here going to try to distribute, rebound, push the tempo a little bit. Yes, he's a little bit of liability on the 3-point arc, but ultimately Giddey, I think, has another level that he's not even having to reach now because Williams, SGA, and Chet have been so great.
Look, man, I love Lou Dort. He is a bulldog, man. And I think you remember when we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, how I believe that the two-way player in many regards are caught in a crossroads of deciding about, where should they continue to hitch their wagon in order to be relevant to the contributions that they're making to their teams. As you get older, obviously there's certain aspects to your game that becomes a little bit more diminished. And if the system that you're playing in tends to put you in a compromising position, meaning you're not able to keep up with these younger guys, you're not able to elevate us over some of these guys, you're not able to defend and stay on some of these guys, it puts you in a bad light, making it seem like, oh, you're done, you're washed, right? You're washed out, you're washed up, And I don't think that's always been the case. I think it comes down to the reliability factor for what you do bring to the table. But whatever it is you do it to the best of your ability. And we've even said that about Jrue Holiday, right? And you can see how the Celtics are utilizing him. They're not asking him to be a scorer, right? But he can score. They're asking him to do the dirty work, to show the younger guys and keep them honest about continuing to do that dirty work for them to be a legitimately good defensive basketball team, which at times loses the Celtics. And the same thing that is being asked upon from the Oklahoma City Thunder is what they're doing with Dort. He comes in and he gets you some shots, he gets you some buckets, but he was never supposed to come in there and try to score you 20, 25 points a game. He gives you 15, but everything else that he's giving you allows that team to play small, to play their style, where they're imposing their will against the opposition and not vice versa. That's why he's there. That's why he's eating up a ton of minutes. And that, to me, I think is the mark of a true coach, understanding his roster and maximizing what the roster gives you. It almost is kind of like masking, people's perceptions that this team is a lengthy team, a big team. But the players that they're putting out there are assuming those roles and are doing those little things that may not afford you the opportunity that the trade deadline can give you in order to fill in those quote unquote weaknesses that you need to shore up if you're trying to make a legit run.
Yeah, and I think how they'll do those things is not really about upsetting much of the roster itself. Is they can maybe trade some truly end of the bench guys, but they have so much draft capital based on all the air quotes tanking they did, and then also the haul they got back for SGA when trading Paul George.
Was it all that progress they were doing?
Progress, yes, let's call it that. Right. So to me, like they are just so poised to be so dangerous. And if it's just a matter of getting over the proverbial humps, if you will, like learning what it means to truly play competitive basketball, the beginning, middle, and deep into the playoffs, like, that's going to be a huge thing. I don't want to just throw that to the side or mention that cavalierly. Like it's a huge situation and a big thing that's hanging over their proverbial heads once the playoffs start. But to me, like I said, they have all the makings in this. And I'm just so enamored with the way they share the basketball amongst themselves. There's not like, hey, I feel like I'm competing to be against SGA. Like Jalen Williams understands, hey, I'm the number 2 guy here. And he distributes the basketball too. He's averaging 4.5 assists this year. He's, right behind Giddey at 4.6. So the fact that you're getting that from your wing player as well, in addition to what SGA is giving and what Giddey is giving, that just shows to me that this is a team that has their proverbial ish together. 5th in offensive rating, 5th in defensive rating, and 2nd in net rating, just behind Boston, ironically. So OKC is definitely the team to watch here for me going into the rest of the season.
I would have really loved, man, and it really just sucks not seeing Steven Adams out there, that if everything had fast forwarded itself, and look,
he's been gone a long time.
No, I know, but you can't predict what happened to John Morant. You can't predict what happened to Desmond Bane. So even if, like, in the best case scenario that the Memphis Grizzlies had plans to move Steven Adams, because of the circumstances that has happened to their season, I would have loved to see him make a return to Oklahoma City. To me, that probably would have been a pickup for, and really to your point, shore up. You don't have to expend a ton of minutes of Steven Adams, but I think that leadership at the front court side of things really kind of bolstered up a little bit beef, a little bit of enforcer. We're really toughening that team up so that they have the mettle to go up against, the more veteran-laden, hard-nosed teams that have been in the playoffs the last few years, because that's what the Thunder are going to run up against, right? And so the youthful exuberance, while it's great, it could run into a buzzsaw, again, to your point about the matchups, right? And I don't know if there's enough time that the season will afford them to be able to kind of really toughen up, Kevlar themselves in order to be better protected, in order to sustain and be able to succeed. But I agree with you. They are among one of the most dangerous teams. One real quick question for you, Shaw, before we transfer over to the All-Star reserves. I was really curious from your perspective, playing teams that you find to be the ones you say, I don't want any part of them if they get into the play-in situation. Who would you be looking at?
Well, I think to me, I don't care how bad they played, and I'm going to start out west. I want no part of the Warriors in the play-in situation. I know everyone's singing and dancing on their proverbial graves, and they're not in the play-in right now, right? As we record, so they're 12th, I think, or something like that, in the West, right? But if they were to creep up, that's not a team I want to see. The Lakers are in the play-in situation. Why would you want to play LeBron? Like, what would give you that why would you want that death wish, if you will? And I understand you can't fear him and you can't fear Steph Curry, but that's not a matchup I think I'd be looking for if I'm any one of those 1 or 2 teams, if I'm the 1 seed or 2 seed, especially with the 1 and 2 seed both being teams who are young and have yet to have true playoff extended success right now in OKC and Minnesota. Now, if that ends up being the Clippers, that ends up being Denver, then maybe that conversation is different. But to me, the Lakers, and if the Warriors end up getting their act together and then somehow in the play-in tournament, those are the 2 teams I want no part of in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I think they would be the ones who would surely upset the apple cart. So yeah, if you're a regular season team and you're in the you're in the playoff conversation, you want to do everything you can to keep those guys as far down the totem pole as possible, like literally out of it as possible. Yeah, no arguments there. It's kind of interesting too, Shaw, because when you think about the idea that there has to be a belief in the young guys that both teams have, are you leaning more that Darvin Ham buys more into his younger guys than Steve Kerr? Or is Steve Kerr using his young guys more out of desperation, recognizing the writing on the wall that he can't run with, the core group that's got him to this particular point the same way that he's done in years past?
I mean, I think it depends what you're determining young guys, right? And then the overall talent level. To me, the Kuminga of this is clearly the highest talented player of any of the young guys on either one of those teams. So Kerr has no choice, really. Kuminga has earned those minutes and is going to continue to get those minutes, I think, pushing forward. From the Lakers side, it's like, oh, well, Jackson Hayes is a young guy, I guess. I mean, like who we're really talking about there in that aspect, where Ham is just kind of mixing, matching lineups, just kind of in general, young, old, mid, doesn't really matter. He's just trying to figure it out to get them to some semblance of consistency in general. So to me, the Warriors are in a better position because they have better talented young guys who they can put into the lineup and potentially usurp some of the veterans that they have there. I'm really interested to see if the Warriors lineup right now, as we're recording the last couple of games, remains Draymond, Wiggins, Kuminga, Clay, and Curry. Like, is that the starting five that you go with, especially with Kuminga giving you that fresh breath, if you will, of youthfulness, if you will. But, you know, the young rookie as well, too, the point guard Podensky, he's a guy who gets a lot of minutes as well, too. And I think he's been a godsend in a lot of ways. Curry seems to have really taken to him. And he does a lot for them on both sides of the basketball, even from an energy standpoint, but also from a play creation. So to me, Golden State's better equipped with their younger guys than the Lakers are. And the Lakers in some ways understand that. And I don't know that Ham has a whole lot of, you know, bandwidth to try to do anything different than what he currently has with what he has on his roster.
I think what's going to be interesting, Shaw, is how those young guys are being utilized, because right now you can make the argument that Steve Kerr has a lot more to play with. Kuzminski, to me, is their Swiss Army knife. And I think, to me, he would be more of the X factor that you would want on either of your team. And I think Darvin Ham is still searching for his Swiss Army knife when it comes to the young guys that he could plug and play with versatility. I feel like he is so refined by only the skill sets that his young players can offer at this time that he has to rely more on what the veterans are doing for him to be able to match up more with the young guys so that there's something cohesive. With Kerr, I think it just really comes down to Kerr reading the room, so to speak, and knowing where these guys can be maximizing what the Warriors need for them to make the kind of run that's necessary for them to be play-in worthy. I mean, we're not even talking about whether or not they're going to be good enough to get to, you know, top 5, 6, 7, 6 teams in the NBA. That's not going to happen. But I do think that he can get them right, where even as a play-in team, the very worst, getting knocked out by the play-in, still helps the young guys. At the very top of it is them helping Curry and those guys make one last run coming out of the play-in situation.
Yeah, well, all remains to be seen. I don't want any part of those teams out in the Western Conference, as I alluded to. And the East, to me, it's the Florida teams. If Miami and Orlando are your 7 and 8 teams, that's not a picnic for anybody. You know, Orlando, especially being as young as they are, and yes, you can say the inexperience is the question. But they have size at basically all positions. They've been battling and fighting injuries all year long. So if they're fully healthy come playoff time, you got to contend with Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner and Mo Wagner and Wendell Carter and everything that's happening, I think, within the front court and the back court for them as well, too. That's just a team, especially with how hard they play defense, that is going to be problematic. And I don't think we need to run off the Miami Heat's resume with Eric Spoelstra and what they've done, no matter where they're seated in the play-in or wherever they're seated in the playoffs. But if they're in that play-in line, God help those number 1 and number 2 teams, because that is not a problem that you want to be trying to get over in the first round.
Absolutely, man. You are tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA midseason focus, man. Great conversation that we had about teams that we're looking at in the midseason who can potentially make noise, and teams that you obviously do not want to be in the play-in situation or even in the playoff tournament altogether. Coming up, we got some news and notes on some injuries going on, and we also need to talk NBA All-Star reserves as the announcements were made. So don't want to miss out. Be sure that you're locked in with us. More Baseline, Callie, Warren, Shaw. Don't go away.
Are you ready to step up your style without compromising the planet? Introducing the exciting partnership between Blueview Footwear and the 19 Media Group Network. Just visit bit.ly/Blueview19 to start your sustainable style journey. Our friends over at Blueview Footwear are renowned for introducing the world's first fully biodegradable sneaker. By using plant-based plastics, they are leading a revolution in cleaner materials and manufacturing. They have sleek and contemporary styles that cater to a wide range of tastes. Blueview Footwear believes that fashion and sustainability can coexist harmoniously. Explore their incredible collection of eco-friendly footwear by visiting bit.ly/Blueview19. If you let us know you made a purchase, we'll shout you out on our next show. Again, just visit bit.ly/Blueview19 today, and you'll see the ultimate collaboration of fashion, sustainability, and media excellence.
We are back. Callie, Warren, Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Let's go through some news and notes right now, Shaw, real quick. Zach LaVine, it's been announced that he is going to be done pretty much for the year, 4 to 6 months. Ankle injury, I believe, or ankle surgery is going to be required.
Yeah, an injury.
So what do we make of this? Obviously, it's very disappointing. Even if you're a Bulls executive, or if you're part of the Bulls franchise now, you know, you literally really can't do anything. If you do, you probably have to pull like a Steven Adams if your intent was to move him. Somebody who's going to be taking a chance on him is looking at it long-term past this season. Certainly it's not a situation, that Zach LaVine would have wanted, as he's obviously trying to really weigh what's left for the rest of his career moving forward.
I'll say this aspect, obviously Zach wanted to come back, seemed like he was going to acquiesce to the way the Bulls were moving in his absence earlier in the year. So I guess he came back, I think 6 games, and he played relatively well, but was playing more team basketball and then got hurt again. It sucks not only for his short-term perspectives, but I think also now, as you alluded to, it's a major name, a big name that probably now does not get moved at the deadline. I say probably because anything can obviously still happen. But I think even from the excitement of like, all right, well, where could have his next destination been? And could he have impacted winning wherever that goes, wherever that was? We won't know that now until next year. And that's whether that's in Chicago or elsewhere. So we wish Zach obviously a speedy recovery, but just a lost season for this young man, who I think really wants to prove that he's not an empty calories type of guy, but will not get that opportunity the rest of the season.
Yeah, it really sucks. Joel Embiid, it's been reported that he does have a torn meniscus. So, he's going to be out for some significant amount of time. If the 76ers currently, I believe, are second in the Eastern Conference, and I don't know how
they
much
are not. they have dropped all the way down to 5th as this recording. So
as we're recording this show, so you have to feel bad for not just Embiid, but you just have to feel bad for the organization and the team. I know it's a big ask, for Tyrese Maxey to now fill in those shoes. But again, this is a great opportunity for Nick Nurse. It's a great opportunity for Tobias Harris, great opportunity for that roster to come together and, to make the most of the situation. They've earned a little equity with the amount of wins that they've collected. And we saw how that impacted, a team like the Brooklyn Nets a couple seasons ago. We saw how last year, we saw how it impacted the Boston Celtics. So it's not like it's all totally lost. Obviously, the confidence that the Sixers can compete with the Celtics or the Bucks or whomever has certainly been marginalized, compromised, no question. But if you're talking about sustained success, this is a great opportunity for the Sixers as a team to really come together and not just prove to themselves, but also prove to Joel Embiid that him being fully healthy and being ready to ride should unequivocally give people the good feels that this is a championship-worthy basketball team instead of the pie in the sky that always seems to happen, that as great as Embiid had even last year, there was no confidence that they were the team that was going to be coming out of the East. So this is an opportunity for the players themselves to, as our man Ryan Hollins had said, stand on business and really show people that once Embiid comes back, that is the missing piece, and this team goes where Embiid takes them when he's fully healthy.
Yeah, I'm a little more dubious and skeptical, I think, than maybe you are. There was a lot of conversation that they needed to make a move with Embiid there, and something needed to happen. And again, not superstarish level, but something on the edges. Now, without necessarily knowing how long Embiid is going to be out, and then just how long does it take him to ramp back up, I think there's a little bit of a different tenor, and it makes Daryl Morey's job incredibly more convoluted going into the trade deadline. Tobias Harris sure has the ability to play better than he has been. I think you're seeing peak Maxey and have been seeing peak Maxey, but now he doesn't have his pick and roll partner alongside him now for the foreseeable future. So as defenses now can truly key in on Maxey as a guy, how does he respond to that? Right? Can he still average 27 a game on the efficiency in which he was shooting? You take out 35 a game, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, with 2 blocks, a steal, and 39% usage from Embiid. I don't know how you can't replace that. Like we know that, so you'd be foolhardy to try.
I'm not saying you can. I'm not even saying that you get.
No, I'm not saying that you did as well too. But it's hard. Like when it's that much of what your production is, just trying to piecemeal that out to other guys, it doesn't come as easy, at least not in my opinion. Like that's a lot of usage and a lot of scoring. So their identity almost changes dramatically for the next foreseeable, however many weeks Embiid is going to be out, to determine, all right, what sense of a team are we ultimately going to be? And you're spot on in terms of how does Nick Nurse coach this up now? What do you have up your sleeve to now put people in different positions so that they can be successful? Do you rely on your defense a little bit more? Do you slow the pace down a little bit more, in essence, because you don't want as many positions going out there, because you don't have that monster in Embiid who can just kind of save you with everything he does offensively and defensively?
Yeah, well, the only thing I'm going to add to your point, because all of your points were salient, but the point that I'm going to add to you is, if this does not light a fire in Daryl Morey's ass, because remember, Daryl Morey got an extension, right? If this doesn't light a fire in your ass that this needs to be addressed, and it should have been addressed, I don't know what will, right? Because the current expectations, regardless of you looking for a guy on the edges, Shaw, the point is that no matter what you do, you're never going to get 100% Embiid, even if you're trying to figure out a way to get him back for this season. You're not getting him at 100%. He may be healed, but he's not going to be nearly the player that you even had last year, because this injury, I believe, is carrying itself back over from last year and the wear and tear. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's making as much ado about the 65-game minimum and him, losing the opportunity to be NBA. And I want to make sure I preface this real quick, Shaw. I think people need to stop with this thing about the minimum and the MVP awards and all of this. This has got nothing to do with this, right? This has to do with, you have arguably one of the greatest NBA centers of our generation right now, who's been playing on one leg for how many years now, okay? And I don't know what the motivation is for him to do the things that he's doing, to achieve the things that he's achieving. But at some point, you may have to slow him down and be like, look, man, what's more important to you right now? Right? This window where you can actually get to an NBA finals, maybe, and win a championship, and at the expense, we can only get you out there certain times, certain number of games and things of that nature, or this idea that you want to be the greatest center, and at doing it, you're going out there not fully healthy, not really taking care of your body in a way that's going to allow you to get through an NBA season, and there's misrepresentation about where the priorities are. That, to me, is the concern. You think about this, Shaw. Go back and think about what the Golden State Warriors had to do with Steph Curry and the sacrifices they made at the early part of his year, knowing that he had been playing with bad ankles, and what they had to do in order to put him on a path where you're now seeing him in his 15th season. If we continue with this trajectory of Joel Embiid, he's not getting to 15 NBA seasons, man. And I think that would be a disservice for us who appreciate the big man and what he's been doing throughout the course of his career. And that, just to me, that's the part that really sucks. And I think we have to start recognizing it, even if it means putting some extra bodies to alleviate what he's putting himself through right now at the expense of not even getting to a conference finals or even an NBA finals.
I'm going to throw two names at you that I think are pseudo-realistic for Philadelphia. And you tell me, if you're Daryl Morey, would you be interested, right? DeJounte Murray, who we've obviously talked about a lot, and the Lakers are pretty much lusting after, I think, at this point. Everyone thinks it might be a foregone conclusion because of the whole clutch situation. But DeJounte Murray, and then on the opposite side, Lauri Markkanen. Which one of those two guys who potentially could be available would make the most amount of sense for Philadelphia?
Markkanen. Because I think at some point, I don't know what you continue to do if you still have Harris. Harris may want to be there. But with Markkanen, you've got the versatility of a 4-5 kind of guy, and someone who can definitely eat up minutes and has proven that he is on the better side of staying healthy for me than what I think your expectations are going to be if you're trying to pair up this matchup with Maxey, Murray, and say Embiid. I like more of where Markkanen is, because I think there's going to come a point where you're going to have a front court presence on the floor when Embiid is not there, and Markkanen can fill that gap in. We've seen the experiment with the 2-guard situation right now in the current climate of the NBA, and it'll only get you so far with the makeup of how the Sixers currently look. But again, I could be wrong. I just believe a little bit more in Markkanen than I probably would with Murray.
Well, I can see where you're going there, and I think either one would make a lot of sense. You just worry if does Murray become an issue for Maxey? Does it kind of get in the way that? But he's not James Harden, right? So I think he can figure that out a little bit better than the Harden-Maxey pairing was. I think a Murray-Maxey pairing could work a little bit more obviously towards Maxey's to his favor, if you will. But Markkanen does make a lot of sense too. especially with his shooting capability. So while Embiid is operating from the mid post, you're not worrying about Markkanen clogging things up, and he can be a kick out threat for Embiid as he's getting doubled. And we're seeing Embiid having the best passing season of his NBA career. So to me, Markkanen would be an amazing get for them. You don't know if that cost them Tobias Harris or not. But if they can bring Markkanen or Murray in, I think Philadelphia, once Embiid gets back, can be right there in the thick of this hunt, man. But I think those would be two great potential additions for that team. All
right, we would like the sign of that. All right, Callie Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Final news and notes, Shaw. Jared Vanderbilt, he's on the injury list. Big blow to the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, huge. We're still waiting to see how long it is. Woj puts out a pretty ominous tweet and then reported on ESPN as well that this could be season ending. So I need to get the news on that ultimately. But I think I was reading something. Darvin Ham was talking to AD and was just like, at this point, like they're just laughing at how much they've been injured. And they've had a lot of stuff going on. They're not the most injured team in the league, but I think just in terms of virtue to where they are, what their expectations were, those injuries have hurt them in a way that they just clearly didn't expect. But to me, nobody's been more snake bitten than Memphis. But at the end of the day, hopefully Vanderbilt is not done for the season. Seems like he's going to miss significant time one way or the other. And if the Lakers can hold firm and at least get into that play-in, maybe he can return then and then give them that defensive presence that he's been so known for throughout his NBA career thus far.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for, again, Darvin Ham to really work the young guys in. And I think if you're LeBron James and you're that great leader that, has always been touted about you throughout your career, this is the time for you to start working with some of those young guys. I don't think you have to worry about Jared Vanderbilt. I think that, it's just a question of, can he stay healthy enough to be able to give you the max effort that he's been giving you all this time? You already know what you're getting with him. But some of these other young guys like Christie, you know what I'm saying, Reeves and these guys, they need the opportunity. They need to work. They need the gameplay situation playing next to LeBron, because I guarantee you when it's clutch time, I'm not saying that LeBron doesn't and AD won't rely on Jared. I'm just saying that, am I passing the ball to Jared Vanderbilt when I need those clutch shots? When I, you know what I'm saying? When I need for you to make a certain play to put me in the best position, I'm looking at some of these younger guys and I'm saying, hey, they're going to be taking up some significant minutes. And it's, to me, a lot harder when they don't know what that's like when they're not on the floor playing. So this, to me, is why I think it's just equally important that the Lakers use this time. If you're not going to make a trade to get something of equal value to what Jared Vanderbilt gives you, then you'd better be making sure you're working those young guys to the maximum to get them ready, so that if Jared Vanderbilt isn't available or is available, you can work with all of the components you have and not just the one player that's on the mend. All right, Shaw, finally, let's get into the NBA All-Star reserves. Announcements have been made. I don't want to belabor it. You can't really be disappointed in who the selections are, but do you find that there's anybody who you felt was snubbed?
Yeah, I need the old adage, if this person was snubbed, who you take off, I get it. But to me, the Kings deserve some semblance of representation, whether that was Fox or Sabonis. I think they just probably needed to be there. I wouldn't say I was surprised Kawhi made the team. I was surprised Kawhi and Paul George both made the team, I guess, if that makes sense. I can see maybe one and maybe not both. But the Clippers are ahead of the Kings in the standing. So, if you're going to reward winning, then that's fine. But the Suns are below the Kings in the standing. So, but Devin Booker is a killer, and, he's a crowd favorite. So, those are just, and Anthony Davis, the Lakers are way below those guys in the standings. But understanding in terms of the talent level, nobody thinks Booker, Kawhi, and Anthony Davis are worse players than Sabonis or Fox. So I think that's, in essence, why they got missed, if you will. And then in the East, I think Trae Young, averaging a double-double, 25 and 10, double-double, 27 and 10, I guess to be exact, is a little hard, especially, but the guards are crazy out there. But it looks like he'll ultimately get in there, I think, as a reserve with Embiid and Julius Randle both likely missing the All-Star game. So I think he gets in. I think the question is, and who will be the second guy that gets in if both of those guys miss? And that could be Jared Allen. Maybe that could be Kristaps Porzingis, if you will. There are a couple of others in the Eastern Conference who are well-deserving. Scotty Barnes, too, I think has been mentioned for that.
This is the reason why, Shaw, I've said that, if this is about the game, okay, right? Understandable, right? You're filling the roster for the game. But why are we taking away or diminishing what statistically is a representation of players playing at an all-star level? I think Trae Young's an all-star. Why do I have to worry about whether or not you're going to play him or not play him in a damn game that really no one cares about anyway, right? What I care about is, and especially what players should care about, is your numbers are a representation of the caliber player that you are when you sit at the negotiating table and they want to compensate you for what it is that you did for said organization or the next team you're going to play for, that they are properly compensating because they're looking at the numbers and they're looking at what it means and what it meant to that team, right? And that to me is the part that just burns me more than anything. We shouldn't have these kind of conversations about snubbing all-star caliber players because what they gave you was all-star caliber numbers, right? They gave you those statistics, regardless of whether or not you're on a good or a bad team. Sometimes the position that you're playing in and the organization and the system that you play for doesn't afford you where you're standing out as an all-star next to the guy who's playing with the team 10 games above 500, and you're there arguably the best player on that team, but collectively the team puts the numbers together to make it look like, well, we would put all 5 of those players out there. You know what I'm saying? So that's the reason why it just burns me at times, man, because we are so far removed with the way that the NBA has set everything up that we can differentiate guys who are all-stars and guys who should be playing in the all-star game.
I think what ultimately needs to happen is that they just need to expand the roster. So we keep talking about it, just do it. You're willing to make so many changes and throw away the old guard thinking, especially when it comes to the even all-star and the voting. And now you have triple votes and all these other these just kind of like gimmicky things, if you will. Then you were trying to do the captains or whatever. So why are we limiting it to those 12 guys? We see people get left off this roster every single year who are ultimately deserving and have the numbers in the case, in essence, to be what are all-stars and what fans would even, players that fans would even want to see playing in the game one way or the other. So to me, a lot of this gets solved if you just expand the rosters to 15 people regardless, call it a day, and then I think you're going to get less of these conversations moving forward. And I just don't know why they haven't gotten to this point yet.
Yeah, it's amazing. It literally is amazing to me, but I'm on board with you with the snubs. I'm not disappointed with the selections. I think it would have been a hard ask, but even I would tell you, I don't think Jalen Brunson is deserving of being an all-star reserve. I think he should be in the conversation of being an all-star starter. You know what I'm saying?
There's no conversation. He should be the starter. Dame got in popularity contest. I mean, that's no fight to Dame,
exactly. Obviously. And that to me, again, is what marginalizes and diminishes the importance of the all-star game. Because even before you get to that point, you have already sullied the interpretation of what is considered an all-star starter, an all-star reserve, because there's no clear definition to it. And that's, again, man, we can talk all day long about how successful it may look like via the TV ratings and the numbers and the popularity of the voting. But in hindsight, the long-term effect of this, Shaw, I know we'll have this conversation again down the road, but I'm telling you the NBA needs to be very leery of these type of things that they're doing, because it is going to have long-term repercussions about whether or not people buy in the viability of why we're even doing this voting process and having this all-star weekend and all-star game. The things that you want to highlight, people ain't buying it, man. They're just not buying it.
Well, I would challenge you, in essence, to go listen to our guy, Gerald Brown, on the Bottom Line Sports Show and also on the 19 Media Network, Heavy in the Paint. He's been challenging Knicks fans for the last couple of weeks. He says it's y'all's fault. So it's interesting. You started the show off, talking about Knicks fans and their overall exuberance. He's like, y'all are in the biggest market in the world. Y'all couldn't vote Jalen Brunson in. Y'all couldn't gather the votes to get Jalen Brunson to be the all-star starter, where it didn't even have to come down to, what it came down to, and got Dame in there. So I think it's a really interesting, test case in New York's overall fandom. They're more excited about the team, and they should be. They shouldn't care about all-star voting, I guess, if you will. But it's interesting, for as exuberant as they are, that market wasn't able to kind of push him over the proverbial hump with their vote, so to speak. But maybe next year. But Jalen Brunson definitely deserves to be the all-star starter. But Dame is for now. And hey, all shouts to Dame. He's playing good basketball as well too.
Yeah, this is what happens when you move a team from Jersey into Brooklyn. they need to go back, and they need to remind themselves. You know what I'm saying? Need to reach back into New Jersey to start paying your respects. Them Jersey folks be helping you sometimes. You may not even know it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Brunson has been, I think nothing but awesome about it. So he'll get plenty of minutes.
Absolutely. He's been first class about this situation and all of this hypeness. Again, man, strip it down to what it really, what it shows, what it resonates to. And again, people need to start looking at themselves in the mirror. If you really want to understand whether or not things are being impacted or changed, look at yourself in the mirror, see whether or not you have helped, impacted, or made that change. You know, instead of jumping on radio stations and yelping and complaining and pissing and moaning, you know, they are the same people that can help other people outside of New York City buy into the legitimacy of Jalen Brunson as an all-star. You know what I'm saying? That's how it all starts. Look, Damian Lillard was an all-star when he was in Portland, for Christ's sake. You know what I'm saying? He's an all-star in Milwaukee, right? That isn't just manufactured. He was a global brand, but it's incumbent upon the fan base from that city to start the conversation. And at times, their fans out here, they miss that. And then that's the reason why, you know what I'm saying, it's all orange and blue skies. I'm like, well, get off your purple haze and start doing what's necessary to legitimize the players that you have and make them out to be the real stars, all stars that they need to be.
Maybe next year, New York fans. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year. All right, man. Awesome show altogether, Shaw. A lot of stuff we covered. Great content as always. Yeah. What a way to start the month of February, my brother.
Absolutely. So as always, I hope our fans and listeners enjoyed the show. Make sure you tap into us on our socials at NBA Baseline on X, at NBA_Baseline on Instagram. Follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. I'm at Game Face Lee. We are so excited to have the conversation about All-Star and obviously who are some of your surprise teams, disappointing teams, dangerous teams going into the not second half, I guess, of the season, but whatever point we're at currently right now, post All-Star break. Let's go ahead with that. Who are you looking forward to seeing? You know, kind of maybe hoist this Larry Roaring Trophy come June. So I'm excited as always, brother. And we'll have some All-Star conversation, and God knows we're gonna have the trade deadline conversation come up later this week. Special guests on tap for that as well too. So make sure you stay tuned to the Baseline.
Absolutely. One final thought I wanted to make sure I throw out there. Shaw and I, you know, we grew up in this generation of, you know, great movies, great actors. Just recently, Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed, our man Action Jackson. That's who I remember him, you know, even though he was, you know, remarkable as Apollo Creed. The great actor passed away at the age of 76. Just, you know, this sucks, man. You know what I'm saying? It's just ironic, you know, when you see people who have put together such a remarkable resume of work in their industry, when they're no longer there, you really begin to appreciate, you know, what era and time you grew up in and how their presence had impacted you. And I just wanted to make sure I give a shout out, man, to, you know, the Weathers family, our condolences. But, you know, he was just a great man altogether. There was not one person I didn't see through social media outlets who were giving their compliments, their kudos. Adam Sandler, you know what I'm saying? Like people like that, just giving nothing but great memories and kudos to him. And he was such a great actor, man. I just want to make sure we didn't get lost on that.
Hey, man, I think that's an amazing way to, you know, definitely kind of put almost a cherry on top of the show. I definitely was a fan of his acting, and obviously grew up on those Rocky movies and what he was able to do. So, you know, as you alluded to, condolences to his family and those who remain. But I'm going to take us in one quick direction as well, too, and on a more positive note. Shout out to our guy, Jabari Davis, put out on Instagram, you know, former co-host of the Baseline here, a longtime friend and family member of the 19 Media Group family, one way or the other. You know, he got the nuptials situated this past weekend, so we're excited for Jabari Davis.
Purple and gold skies, baby. Purple and gold skies.
Right, he had the purple tie on with the purple and gold, you know, Air Forces, I believe. Just an exciting situation for him. So shouts to our brother, you know, our family out there, and Jabari Davis and his lovely wife, man. That's amazing.
And not only is he married to the game, he is married to the dame. I like it. I like it. Shout out to our man Jabari, man. Congratulations, brother, to you and the family, man. And listen, man, we can't wait for you to come on board, and you know what I'm saying, air out your what is now your union love.
He'll be flashing a different type of ring for us, I think, next time.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Add that one up to the banners, my brother. Add that one up to the banners. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren, Shaw, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for hopping on board with us this week, and we'll catch up with you next time.